Hello and welcome to Fire in the Belly. Today we have myself, Mighty Pete, and we're joined by Will Polston. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How you doing, Pete?
Brilliant, brilliant. Mighty, thanks for thanks for coming on. I appreciate that.
Absolute pleasure.
So tell us, Will, who are you? What are you doing? Where are you from?
Sounds like something from Blind Date, doesn't it?
Blind
What's your
Date,
name? Where do you
yeah,
come from? I'm Will Polston, and I'm a mindset strategist. I have a coaching and training company called Make It Happen. And we work with entrepreneurs, leaders, and ambitious professionals to live purposeful, inspired, and energized lives. Based down in Essex, and I sort of live for getting people to transform excuses into results and live a life they love.
You've done that once or twice. I like it. That's a man that knows what he's on, that knows his mission. I love it. So tell me, what does Fire in the Belly mean to you, Will?
I think sort of fire in the belly for me is inspiration. You know, is what is it? What's that drive? What's that feeling that we all have where we feel we're ignited when we're on fire? I mean, if you take the word inspiration, in spirit. Another word for spirit is in energy. When are you just full of energy, firing on all cylinders, and feel like you can run through brick walls? You know, it doesn't matter what comes up in front of you. It's not a problem. It's a challenge, and it's something that actually excites you rather than disempowers you when you see a hurdle in front of you. And it is exactly that. Like, a hurdle for me is something to be run over. It's not a wall there to stop you. And for me, that fire in the belly is that inspiration, which of course for everybody is completely different. And some people have tapped into theirs. Some people are yet to tap into theirs. And it's one of the things that I actually love doing, is getting people to tap into that, getting access to that unlimited resource of energy, which they have, that they can channel in a way that is beneficial not only for themselves, but their family, their friends, their community, society, humanity, and the
That's
universe.
cool. So what, I mean, would you say you've got fire in your belly?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I it's interesting because I feel like for 20 years I've had fire in my belly. But for the last 8 years, it's been a different fuel, let's call it, you know. So everybody knows, for there to be fire, there has to be fuel. It could be gas, it could be coal, it could be wood, it could be whatever it is. And I had a shift in fuel source, let's say, about 8 years ago now, which was a huge catalyst that just sent me off on a completely different trajectory. So once upon a time, my fuel was money, and I believed that money equaled happiness, and that was my fuel. And then I had a big realization, which was like a bit like one of those moments, you know, those arcade machines where you pop the 2Ps in, it bounces around, and it gets to the bottom with that slider, and it's like that slider hit out, all of a sudden I hit the jackpot, you know, and all the 2Ps come rushing down, and it felt like one of those moments, what I call my lightning moment, and that was where the fuel source changed.
Well, I look forward to hearing more about that. So is it something you live daily, or is it something you almost get into your sort of passion state, if you like?
Um, I would say I live it daily. I mean, I'm human, the same as everybody else, and I have emotions that ebb and flow. But I suppose my baseline is higher than people that may have not tapped into this yet. It's
Sure.
probably the best way of explaining it.
Well, let's take us back. So, where are you from originally? Talk to us about your upbringing and your family, and
Yeah, for sure. So I'm from Essex. Born and raised, um, I'm very fortunate. I mean, I don't have like a typical Cinderella story like a lot of people that work in the personal development space do. I'm very fortunate. I've got a wonderful family. My parents are still together today. I've got two sisters and a brother. I we like I say, we did okay as a family. I mean, we weren't millionaires, but I always had shoes on my feet, clothes on my back. But one of the things that I used to remember growing up was when my dad used to come home, how much he would complain and bring the stress and the frustration of work home with him every day. He used to work in London he was involved in IT in a big brokerage, and yeah, it was sort of quite stressed, and used to bring that stress home. And I vividly remember that. I mean, he used to leave the house at 5 o'clock in the morning, get home at 7:30 at night. And I remember that. And I've got two uncles, which aren't my actual real uncles. They're my dad's best mates, but one of them's a billionaire. One of them's a multi-millionaire. And what's really interesting is that they're sort of real characters, you know, particularly one of them, Uncle Steve's the life and soul of the party. He's that energy, you know, he's enthusiastic and energized, and yeah, there's all that stuff. And I remember one day my dad I came home from school, and I was sort of 10, 11 at the time, and my dad was home, which was really unusual, you know, because like I say, normally he'd leave at 5 a.m, get home at 7 o'clock at night, and he was home, and basically he'd quit his job to go and set up a business with one of my uncles. I thought, yes, this is it. Dad's going to be just like Uncle Steve, really enthusiastic, really energized, and all that good stuff. And long story short, that business never got going. It never happened. My dad ended up getting depressed, stereotypically depressed, slept in a separate room to my mum, curtains shut, all that stuff. And after a period of time, I started to make the connections. I was like, hold on a minute. There's Dad when he worked in London. All right, he was stressed, he was frustrated, but he's a lot happier than he is now. There's Uncle Mark. He's a billionaire. He always seems really happy. There's Uncle Steve. He's a multi-billionaire. He really seems really happy. So it's obvious money equals happiness. So that kind of sent me off on that trajectory. I was the kid at school buying and selling whatever I could to make a few quid. And yeah, there's certainly some stories there. And then eventually I got into, what do you do when you're sort of 12, 13 years old and you're earning a few £100s a week? Well, what I did was buy stuff, you know, so I become quite materialistic, because like anything I wanted, I could buy, whether it be trainers, clothes, whatever. Got quite into fashion. Decided that I wanted to get into fashion more. I liked quite a lot of high-end fashion brands. I started working for a clothes shop here in Essex. And at the time, it was the only clothes shop in the world outside of a city, because this was before Chelmsford was a city, that sold Gucci, Prada, Dolce & Gabbana, and Etro, those 4 brands in one shop in an independent outside of the city. So I was in sort of this quite cool environment. Always decided I was going to run my own clothes shop. And then there was this guy, a bit of a legend in the industry, called Neil Bounds. And Neil opened a clothes shop just up the road. And long story short, that failed. It didn't work. And I thought to myself at 17 years old, oh my God, if Neil can't do it, there's no way I'm going to be able to do it. So I need to change career. Now, fortunately for me, a lot of my clientele at the time were also wealthy, which of course I was driven by. I wanted to be wealthy because of course money equals happiness. So at least that's the belief I had then. And I categorized those clients into 4 different categories. They were either professional footballers, property developers, stockbrokers, or drug dealers. And I was like, I just need to become one of them. So the first one I ruled out was becoming a professional footballer, because I'm useless at football. The second one I ruled out was being a property developer, because I was 17 years old. Where am I going to get the money to go and develop property? And I was left with 2 options, either sort of getting involved in the financial world, or sort of get into drugs. And to my mother's delight, I chose the former, and didn't go down that route. So yeah, I did. I came into investment sales, and 18 years old, I was commission only, and I stumbled across a book called The Secret that many people have heard of, about the law of attraction. And I remember at 18 years old reading this book and going, hold on a minute. Actually, I've achieved quite a lot for an 18-year-old. Like all this stuff that I'd done, these material items that I'd sort of manifested. I've never heard of the word manifested, but all this stuff I'd done, like I'd literally thought of it, created it in my mind's eye, and then sort of pulled it into via reality. And I thought, well, what would happen if I applied this consciously? So I did, and I applied more personal development, and the more personal development I did, the more money I earned, and I kept going through that route. By the time I was sort of in my late teens, I was earning more money a month than most people earn a year, and sort of kept that going, and had more personal development. And then in 2013, I went to an event with a pretty well-known speaker in the personal development world called Tony Robbins, and had what I call my lightning moment. And in that moment, it was when he shared the story of what's known as the Thanksgiving story. And the particular story that he shares is to do with a stranger that comes and presents his family with a Thanksgiving dinner at Thanksgiving, because they weren't in a position to afford it. And his dad basically says, I can't remember, I'm paraphrasing it here, but something along the lines of, we don't accept charity. And one of the things that, and I heard that, and then sort of left the house and was really down and felt really bad for family. And then he subsequently left and didn't come back for either ever or for a period of time. I can't remember what it was. And in that moment, I just burst out crying for about 15 minutes, because in that moment, I the metaphor for me was my dad always said, they just got lucky, referring to my Uncle Steve, my Uncle Mike. They just got lucky. They just got lucky. And what I heard was Tony Robbins, this guy that's been a legend in the industry for, at that point, sort of 35 years, had gone on to empower millions of people and done all this incredible stuff because of this catalyst that was his driver, his fire in his belly, if you like, of partly at that moment. And I thought, well, if he did that because of that, then maybe that's the path that I need to go down too. You know, I can use that as the catalyst. And I vowed in that moment, I don't want anyone else to have to go through the suffering, in inverted commas, that I perceived my dad to go through, and arguably we went through as a family, as a result of my dad not achieving his full potential and doing what he was truly capable of, and experiencing that true fulfillment and inspiration and that joy and that energy by doing those things. And I set out on that mission, and sort of life was never the same again from that moment.
Well, it's amazing how these things happen. So you were saying you were about 10, 11 when your dad actually, he changed jobs, was it?
Yeah, so he sort of left the job that he was working in the city. I was about that age, and yeah, like I say, I was sort of. I'm sure you've experienced yourself, Pete. Is that when you're around certain people, they've got a certain energy, that you can tell that they're not happy. You know, they don't have to communicate. They don't have to scream and shout, but you can just sense that energy. And I really vividly remember sensing that energy and being aware of that at that young age. And yeah, I specifically remember that one day when I come home from school and Dad was home, because that was like unseen. You know, it never happened. The only time that sort of Dad was at home was when we were going on holiday, and we were on holiday. But other than that, other than those 4 weeks a year, he was out first thing in the morning, home at 7, 8 o'clock at night. But yeah, that was that.
Well, let's take us right back. I mean, you know, Will at 7, who were you? What were you like?
7, wow. Who was I at 7 years old? So I think, yeah, I've always had a cheekiness to me, a bit of a cheeky chappy. I actually found a school report. I must have, how old am I? Was I in year 3 or year 4? So I must have been like 8 or 9, maybe a little bit older. And I remember finding the school report, and it was really interesting reading it, because it was very much the same as what I am now. Like Will can lose focus. Will likes to talk. Will likes to be in the social environment, sort of doing social things. So that was quite funny. But yeah, I love socializing. I played rugby from when I was 4 years old. I started playing ice hockey when I was 8 years old. I've sort of kept myself around other people and yeah, sort of trying to have fun and play as much as any other kid does. But I definitely think that I was very mindful of, I suppose, playing by the rules at that age. You know, I wasn't sort of the rebel kid. I don't think I was I think I was sort of quite well behaved generally. All right, probably lean on the edge of sort of cheeky and whatever, but yeah, I definitely wasn't one of the rebel childs that was always causing havoc. But yeah, that's probably around 7.
So losing focus. Where was your focus? Do you know?
I think it was more just a attention span of jumping from one thing to the next. And it's interesting because it's something that I spend a lot of time and energy and effort focusing on these days. You know, I'm a huge fan of meditation. For me, meditation is certainly 30 days out of 31 a non-negotiable activity, the same way that for me, showering is non-negotiable, brushing my teeth is non-negotiable in the morning. Meditation is the same. You know, even if I have to cram in 5 minutes, I'd rather be 5 minutes late and have meditated for the day than not. That definitely helps me channel my energy and focus, for sure.
Wow. It's always great. So, but school in general, I mean, were you academic? Was that your thing, or was it just a case of wait for the bell to get the hell out?
Yeah, I think so. It's funny. I always say a sort of a B grade student. I mean, my GCSEs, I got 6 Bs, 3 Cs. You know, I definitely wasn't an A-star student. I wasn't the worst. I think, like with a lot of things, I would apply myself, or I was capable of doing more than I did, if that makes sense. In a lot of instances. But yeah, I mean, I suppose from my friend's perspective, I sort of hung around with a lot of the more sportier kids, of which generally, and I am generalizing here. You find a lot of them are maybe not as academic. I probably sat in the definitely the more academic and capable of those guys, and sometimes get a bit of stick for that, I suppose, and generally was a little bit more well behaved. I mean, there's still a few stories of old of getting up to mischief and whatnot, of course, but yeah, definitely a little bit more academic, which is crazy really, because now I'm obsessed with learning. I think there's something that I didn't understand until I was probably 25 maybe, is that the difference between a schooling and an education. You know, for me, they're two very different things. And I mean, this isn't about going on a rant, but I believe that the whole schooling system is broken and has been for many, many years. And I think that's primarily because young adults are rewarded on achievement rather than effort. And I believe that we're all capable of achieving more, but we've all got different zones of genius. And yeah, look, there's certain things that are important to for all of us to learn and understand, read, write, etc. But in terms of that side of things, I definitely think that there's a change that's possible that can enable a lot more people to flourish. And for me, understanding that an education was about the whole Kaizen process. We don't have a word for it in English, but basically continuous improvement, you know, that continual never ending improvement. Now I'm obsessed with learning. Not a day goes by without me learning something new, or at least attempting to learn something new. Obviously these days, a lot of time you're refreshing memory, but I'm a dear friend of mine, she refers to me as the Mr. Curious. You know, I'm constantly curious. I want to know why. I'm the why guy. You know, it's like, just, I've got a big book out here with a client that suggested something just earlier. I didn't know the answer, so I'm sort of researching the answer, see if I can find the answer to help him and give him more insight and uncovering those nuances. And for me, schooling was a means to an end. You do X, you get Y. You put in work, you get a qualification. Whereas now education for me is about understanding that there's so much we don't know, but gaining that information, other saying, sort of new knowledge, any new knowledge gives us an opportunity to grow. And I truly believe that, like, a fulfilled life comes from growth. It comes from contribution, and growing mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically gives us that platform to be able to go on and contribute more and impact others, which is something I talk about a lot, which is what I refer to as the ripple effect. You doing what you're capable of so you can benefit yourself, your family, your friends, your community, society, humanity, the universe.
And that, just interesting on that ripple effect. I mean, was that initially for yourself, or was it to give back? I mean, how did you view it at first?
It's interesting. I do this dance, and I've done this dance for many years around this, in that when I very first had that realization, that Tony Robbins event, it was like the driver at the time. I used to say that I wanted certain things to be achieved so that my mum could benefit, right? Because my mum made a lot of sacrifices for us and when we were younger, because of certain situations with my dad and all the rest of it. And then I realized that actually one day I was like, actually, no, it's not about my mum necessarily. It was more about my dad, and my dad not achieving what he was capable of. So I used to project, right? I used to project on my mum, I used to project on my dad. And then I realized, actually, no, Will, it's about you. It's not about you wanting them to achieve or you wanting your mum to achieve. It's about you wanting you to achieve. So I say that people can either be a pebble or they can be a boulder. If you imagine a still lake, you drop a pebble in that lake, it's going to create a few small ripples. You drop a boulder, it's going to create much bigger ripples. And the people that you positively impact as a result of your actions will be determined about how much you grow. So whether you grow from being a pebble or grow into a boulder. And I've got a mission. My mission is I want to empower 1 billion people within my lifetime. Now, I'm not naive enough to think that I'm going to work with 1 billion people. I'm not naive enough to think that even Make It Happen is going to work with 1 billion people. Look, don't get me wrong, never say never. You never know what's possible, particularly with the advances in technology. But what the way I truly do believe that that's possible for that to happen is within my lifetime, we could directly impact 10 million people. And if those 10 million people, as a result of the insights that we introduce them to, the methodologies that we take them through, go on to impact 10 others, and those 10 impacts install those, and they go on to impact 10 others, that's 1 billion people that could be impacted as a result.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I mean, I love that. You know, that sort of ripple analogy where, you know, a statement keeps going and you can change generations too. It's
without a
amazing.
doubt.
So, I mean, early in your teens and into secondary school, what sort of a time were you having in secondary school then?
Yeah, again, I think for me, school was definitely a very social thing. With the lads, bit of fun. Played a lot of sport throughout school. So like I say, whether it's ice hockey with my ice hockey mates, rugby with my rugby mates, athletics, football. I mean, I will hold my hand up. I was useless at football, and yeah, that was definitely something that was good fun. But growing up into my teens, I was just really ambitious. I mean, it's been an ongoing joke with my mates for years about how money driven I was. Like I said, I would do all sorts of stuff. But I mean, back then, I used to search for stuff I searched for stuff in the paper, local gazette, and I would find stuff in that paper, and then I would look on eBay and see if it was selling for more. So then I would literally buy it from the paper, sell it straight on eBay. I used to buy in stuff. Yeah, I mean, there was all sorts of stuff that I was doing to try and make money when I was younger. And I even, as at my school prom at 16 years old, I was nominated for the most likely to be a millionaire before 30 with sort of my entrepreneurial traits and little mini businesses that I used to run back then. So yeah, there was definitely an ambition there for sure that was driven by at that point driven by money. And one of the other big realizations that I had, again, only a few years back now, was that what the purpose of business is, which sounds crazy, right? It's such a simple question. What is the purpose of business? And for me, there's a difference. When I talk about a vision, so for me, a vision consists of two elements. It can consist of a purpose and a mission. The why behind business is the emotive reason. And the emotive reason, if you look at most successful businesses, they're there. The purpose of the business is to solve a problem. The mission is to make money, right? That's why it's a commercial enterprise rather than to be a charity. But the actual why behind it is to solve a problem of some sort. And depending on what level of business you're at, is typically the bigger the business, particularly if it's been around for a long time, the bigger problem it's solving for society generally, or you can sort of chunk up from that or chunk down from that. But yeah, typically it's there the purpose is to solve is to solve a problem. And I never really got that. I always thought that the point of business was to make money. I never really understood that actually, no, the purpose of business is to solve a problem.
So at that age, you were solving a problem, which for you was even mentally, whether it was or it wasn't, that finances. So the more you did, the more you bought and sold, then the more money you had, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I mean it makes sense, and it's understanding that mission again, understand the difference between vision, mission, ethos of a company, and the person as well is always interesting.
Yeah, I mean, even now, like I reflect back and go, right, well, what was it when those people were buying those things that I was selling back then? It did something for them, whether it gave them significance because it was a luxury item they were buying, whether it was I was selling a camera that I'd found for 40 quid that on eBay was selling for 80 quid. They wanted that camera. It was solving a need that they had or solving a want that they had. And yeah, it was just realizing that I never realized that and connected that dot and all those dots backwards. And when I realized that, and you look at all, and it's one of the things I'm obsessed with, Pete, is studying successful people, and that's successful people in relationships, in business, in friendships, in all these different things. And I look for the patterns. What's the patterns? What's the difference that makes the difference? And one of the things that we can all look at externally, and in neurolinguistic programming, we talk about modeling, is that we can all model someone's external actions, but one of the things that we don't know until we ask it is what's going on internally. And the people that, let's face it, business is hard. I don't know what the stats are, but whatever it is, like only 4% of businesses last 10 years and 90% of businesses don't last a year, or whatever the stats are. I don't actually know what they are, the accurate ones, but I'm sure you've heard of them. Is that the difference that makes a difference, that what keeps people going, is that fire in their belly, that why, that driver. And yeah, I think that's really interesting.
So what was your first job then, or first money making activity? Do you remember?
Yeah, my first money making activity was a paper round. So I had a few different paper rounds. So I did the paper rounds. That was my first, like, where I got a pay slip and yeah, whatever it was,
Wow, they
£5.
give pay slips with paper rounds.
Oh
Wow.
yeah, for sure. My little brown paper bag and my little mini pay slip in it, cash in hand. Yeah, so that was that. And then, like I said, the entrepreneurial endeavors. And then I was quite cheeky. So one of my one of my good friend's parents, he was a couple of years older than me, bought a hotel and bar, and he was 16 at the time, and he used to be a pot boy in this bar, and it was sort of the place to go to as a young adult, at 18, 19 years old, in this particular town that I lived in. And one day he messaged me and said, "I will, so and so, who's one of our other friends, can't work tonight. Do you want to work?" And I was like, yeah, count me in. Now, he was 2 years above me, so I was only 14 at the time. But for me, 14 years old, being in this bar, and like, when you're 14 years old and you go into a bar, regardless if you're working there or not, you feel cool. You know, there's all these like 18, 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds drinking, getting drunk, DJ. It was like all this real cool thing. I was like, yeah, this is really cool. And did that. So I started when I remember that evening, they're like, wow, well, you're really, because I worked really hard. Even at 14 years old, I had this immense work ethic. And they're like, you're like the best pot boy we've ever had. Like, there's never did we have to wait for glasses, never when the fridge is not unstocked. And I did that, and they're like, we know you're not 16. When are you 16? And I was like, a year and 3 months. And they all looked at each other like, wow, this guy's 14 years old. They thought it was like only a month or two until I was going to be 16. So we kept that on the quiet, and I carried on working there for a few years. So I did that on a Friday and Saturday night, which was pretty fun. So that was another role. But yeah, that was.
What were you paid? Do you remember? What was the
I
going
was
rate at that
paid
time?
really well, actually, and it was one of the things that I remember is that what they didn't do, and I really respected them for this, is that they could have very easily paid me half or less than half because of my age. And they didn't. They paid me what was still back then like good. It was way more above than the
National average
minimum
or
national wage.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think even back then it was like, bearing in mind we're talking 17 years ago. We're talking like probably 9 or 8 to £10 an hour, I think it was.
Wow, that was great.
And yeah, back then, 17 years ago. And then obviously the other thing that was great as well was that when you're in a bar, and if you maybe not experienced this, I certainly didn't when I started drinking, but at the end of the night in a bar, round by the bar, there is loads of money. But the amount of people that pull money out of their pockets, pound coins, £5 notes, £10 notes, £20 notes. There is loads of money. So I used to sort of go around sweeping at the end of the night and probably pick up an extra 30 or 40 quid a night just from all the money that was left down by the bar that people sort of dropped out their pockets or bags or whatever. So yeah, that was quite funny.
You normally know it's, like I say, it's either the glass collectors or the bouncers who are sweeping people off the bar and nudging people out the door, and they've got eagle eyes on the floor. You know, it's great.
Yeah, exactly.
It's free money essentially. You know.
You're right. Exactly.
Well, I mean, where does that work ethic come from? Because I mean, it's obviously it's come out of you really early, and you know, it's great to see it. So the entrepreneurial gene, but was it in you, or is it from your surroundings, or what?
Do you know what? I think I was very fortunate, and I was fortunate in that I actually recorded a podcast, my own podcast that come out today called "Who's Your Key Leader?" And the process of the question that I asked is, who as a child did you look for, other than your parents? Who did you as a child did you look forward to seeing with the most affection, and why? And for me, it was my Uncle Steve. And one of the things that I knew about my Uncle Steve was that he just worked really hard, partly because he always told us how hard he was working, but it was evident, but he had the niceties that went with it. And like I say, the thing that's very different for me now is I question why behind everything, you know, whereas back then I just saw and connected the dots myself. I was like, right, well, he works really hard and he's really happy and he's got nice material items, nice house. Well, that must be the reason. So that was definitely an influence. My Uncle Mark, again, one of the incredibly successful. He literally started selling T-shirts on Venice Beach, and now he's one of the most influential people in the world, arguably. And that come from a work ethic. So I think it was just sort of, again, it was installed into me around my environment of what's possible. And the way it was communicated certainly gave me the impression that it came from hard work. And I do believe hard work's important. I believe smart work is equally important. And you can work smart, but work hard at the same time. You know, I talk a lot about the definition between being efficient and lazy, you know, and you could look at someone that's really efficient and you could see them and you go, they're lazy. Or you could look at someone that's lazy and just say, well, they're being efficient because they're doing certain things in certain ways. And I definitely like to think of myself as efficient. I work very hard. I mean, there's not many people that I know that if we went toe to toe will outwork me. And it's not about it being a competition, but it's because I love what I do. You know, I don't work myself to the bone doing stuff that I hate. I just try and maximize my time by spending as much of my time doing the things that I love doing. So then for me, it's not work. You know, I don't believe in work-life balance. I believe in work-life integration. How do I make sort of all of those things combined so that I get to hang out with friends like yourself on a Tuesday afternoon and have a real good chat and talk about wicked stuff. And at the same way, share some nuggets that could be useful for people and get to call this work. You know, some people, this is their social catch up at the weekend, you know, but for me, I get to have the pleasure of, because don't get me wrong, it's the life by design of having this and enabling that to happen. So
it's, you know, it's awesome. I love the, you know, your lessons and your learnings on it already. But tell me, in school, were you, you know, did you ever have your eyes on a traditional career as such? I mean, or was it always?
yeah, again, and this is really interesting. I remember, I think they're called careers days or something, like school careers days, where you have certain businesses that come in and display what's possible for you. And I used to walk to school, and the way I used to walk to school was we used to walk past this building. It was quite a cool looking building, glass building. And the building itself was an architect practice. I remember, again, being about 13 years old and thinking, yeah, I want to be an architect one day, because I enjoyed, I did graphic design at school. I enjoyed designing. I enjoyed graphic design, which was sort of a form of creation. And I wanted to be an architect. So that was quite cool. I vaguely remember the thing that put me off the idea of that. So that was one of the reasons why I took graphics in year 9 as an option, was because I wanted to be an architect, and that was something that I was led to believe. But then one of the things that I was quite evident about was that actually, so we talk about modeling, one of the things I really tried not to do was be anything like my dad. So my dad reads loads. I didn't read the last book I remember reading, like whole book that I read, was I was in year 6 and I read Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, the very first Harry Potter book. I read about chapter 2 of the second Harry Potter book. I put it down. I did not read another full book out of choice. I mean, I think we had to read some in English that we all read together as a but I didn't choose to read a book until I was 18 years old and I read The Secret. So for probably 6 or 7 years, I did not read another book because I didn't want to be anything like my dad. That was definitely something that was a learning. Sorry, what was the question? I've digressed slightly there.
I was talking about, you know, just in terms of your first career. So you talked about whether, you know.
You said about being the architect. Yeah, that was it. So, and then the other thing that put me off was, like I was saying, I didn't want to be anything like my dad. And my dad went to university and did a master's or whatever at uni. And then I found out I had to go to uni to get a degree to be an architect. And again, I didn't want to be like my dad, so I had that conflict. I was like, oh no, I don't want to do that now.
It's interesting, you know, because I suppose at that young age and you know, with your dad, it obviously had an impact on you.
Yeah,
you know, and seeing that.
Yeah, huge impact.
And it's interesting the way people cope with that. You know, do you know, was it the situation with your dad, or do you know what
I know exactly what it was. Yeah. So for me, like I was very fortunate. I say it's not a Cinderella story by any means. And but what did happen was that there was me, my 2 younger brother and sister, and then my youngest sister, who's 10 years younger than me. So she was like 1. And then my mum had always been there for me and my brother and sister, picked us up picked us up from school, took us to school, was always there, sort of housewife looking after us. And then I remember what happened was that then when my dad stopped working, then my mum had to go out. She was working like multiple different jobs. She couldn't be there for my baby sister. And I started to resent my dad for the decisions that he was making because of the impact that it was having on my mum and the impact that was then having on my baby sister, because she wasn't then getting the same experience for us. And for me, it was like, obvious, well, Dad, just go back to work, go to work and do what you want to do. And then mum doesn't have to live like this. Alice, my youngest sister, gets to experience what we experienced, and you'll be happier as well, So for me, it was a no-brainer. And I remember even as a sort of 13, 14-year-old, there was a period of time where for the best part of 18 months, I hardly remember even talking to my dad, which is pretty awkward when you both go downstairs and you want to have your Cocoa Pops in the morning. But yeah, it was, that was the driver for sure.
It is. It's so hard. It is. I know for myself, my mother, she got breast cancer, and she was diagnosed first when I was 16, and I was so angry at her, and it's crazy now. I mean, it's a mixture of teens and all the rest, but it was like how selfish, how annoying, and all the rest, and it's funny how you perceive things at that time,
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, without a doubt.
It's going through. So 18, you get to GCSEs. Did you go A levels, or what route you go?
Right. So it's again funny story. So like I said, I was working in this clothes shop, and I've been working there as a Saturday boy. So again, I used to at this point. So I was 15, working there as a Saturday boy. So I used to work in the bar on a Friday and Saturday. Then on a Friday and Saturday night, on a Saturday, I'd work in the clothes shop all day. So literally, I'd spent from 15 years old, I would spend Friday night working. I used to get there for 8:30 or 9 o'clock, and I would finish at 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, and then I would start working my day job on the in the clothes shop, and I would have to be there for 8 in the morning, and I'd work through there till 6, and then I would go home, have dinner, and then I'd go and work the Saturday night. So I worked a lot. And then I finished school, and then my plan was I was going to go to college and do a BTEC in business. So school finished by the time the exams finished in June. I worked in the shop every day, June, July, August. And then I remember the boss at the time saying, hey, look, we'd love to have you stay on if you'd be interested. And I was like, hold on a minute. I can learn about business. Bearing in mind, I went to run my own clothes shop. So I was like, I could either learn business on the job from someone I admire and influences me and I trust and learn on the job, or I can go and learn it from a book. I think I'll learn it on the job, thanks. I remember telling my mum was like, no, look, come on, go to college, just go for a day and let me know what you think. And I said, all right, mum, look, I'll go for a day. I'll just see what it's like. And I went for the day, and then I quit on day 1 of college, just so that I ticked that box for my mum. I mean, it wasn't all lost though, because I did see this beautiful girl whose number I got that ended up becoming my girlfriend for a few months after. So that wasn't a complete waste of time. But yeah, no, it was definitely an interesting journey. And then I worked on that, and by the time I was 17, I was assistant manager of 5 or 6 of their stores. I had managerial experience for part of it at 6 weeks at 17, when the guy that ran it, bearing in mind this is a multi-million-pound business that I'm sort of sitting at the helm of at 17 years old, and sort of managing one of the 6 stores myself for 6 weeks. That was a great experience and great responsibility. And I was around some really influential people. Like I mentioned, the type of people that I regarded as influential back then, very successful, and sort of, it was a cool experience. So yeah, I did that. So I tell you about, I did actually then go to evening college for a little while. I did that for literally a month or so, just to, again, try and sort of meet the demand. My mum wanted me to go to college and me wanting to work, but that didn't last very long. And then it went from there.
What was it about fashion? Was it and the business? Do you remember?
Yeah, I know exactly what it was. So when I was much younger, it was significance. So the idea of like, I can go out and buy designer clothes gave me an element of significance. that's definitely a part of it. Part of it was I had money, and I think that's just something that I perceive people to do that have money, is they buy nice things. So yeah, that was definitely a part of it. And yeah, I think, yeah, the significance and maybe the attention that I got as well. I mean, I've again done a lot of reflecting work, and I think that if I look back to where in my life was there potentially a need for significance to come from? Well, when you're 2 years and 9 months old and your parents have twins that are boy and girl, all of a sudden you're not so special anymore, you know? So I imagine that it's partly down to that, at a real deep level, subconsciously somewhere, that there's a need to feel a need to be significant in some way or another. I mean, I'm not the tallest guy in the world. I'm 5'8". Obviously, as you're growing up, like most kids get teased about something, whether it's the way they look or their size or whatever. There was probably an element of that, and yeah, fashion probably gave me that first opportunity of having an element of significance that maybe I hadn't had or hadn't perceived to have had. Yeah, for sure.
So you're there, you're working your Friday nights, Saturday day, Saturday nights, good pay packets, and probably wealthy for someone that age, right?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Do you know what's really interesting, Pete? So I did a bit of work a few years ago, because I'm always interested in, like, how can I connect the dots? What's the hidden patterns that we're not aware of, and how do we make the unknown unknowns become the known knowns? And one of them was, I asked people, what do you want to be when you're a kid?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I actually haven't got it here. I wish I did have it here, but I'll share something else with you in a minute. So, if I look to what I do now, so now I'm a mindset strategist. I work with people to get out of their own way and achieve some great stuff. If I look back at all of the jobs that I did, so when I was a paper boy, I delivered information.
Mm-hmm.
When I was working as a pot boy, I was making sure things run efficiently and effectively. When I then wanted to be an architect, I wanted to create.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I then got into working in investment sales, and I was providing better futures for people, or that's what we were attempting to do, at least in some way, by introducing certain investment opportunities. Now, if I look at those sort of deeper messages between all those things, that's exactly what I do now. I deliver information to people via the form of coaching, or literally directly teaching them it, that brings them new insights and new information. I make things more efficient and more effective for people in their own lives. I help them become the architect of their own life and co-create that life for them. I provide a way of or strategies for them to create better futures for themselves. And it's really interesting, when you look at that common thread that runs between all those different things. I think it's really, really, really interesting when you see that. But a couple of months ago, I went to my aunt. So I've been quite interested in my family tree. There's some in my family, like when you start going into sort of great uncles and great aunts, there's some really interesting stories, like bank robbers and all sorts of stuff in sort of the distant family from sort of 100 years or so ago. And I think some really interesting stuff. And I just find I was always interested in history as a kid. And so one Sunday afternoon, I said to my aunt, look, I'd love to come over. I know that you've done a lot of study in the family tree, and look, I'd love to sort of like pass the torch to me, if you like, and I'll carry on and unpack it all. She said, yeah, no, of course. So I went round there, and before we got going, she goes, well, I've got a gift for you. And I thought, oh, that's really nice of you. She gives me this little figure. And the figure, I actually don't know what the term of it is, but like in Greece, like from ancient Romans or ancient Greece, they used to have those big, like white, they're probably not white, they're made out of marble or something, those statues that people are naked and they're like reading, or I think there's the really famous one with the guy that sort of got his skin on
Thinking man.
Thinking man, yeah, exactly. But there was this one that was a really young boy. I mean, you can't be any older than 3 years old, sat there naked with his leg crossed, right leg crossed over, reading a book. And I looked at this statue, and she said, do you remember this? And I said, no, I don't remember it. She goes, this is a gift that I bought your nan, so her mum, so this is my dad's sister. This is a gift that I bought, Nanny Fran, and you were like 2 when we bought this gift for them. And whenever you used to go there, you'd always want to go to it and pick it up and play with it. And you'd talk to it and you'd do all this stuff. And I remember thinking, like, I have no recollection of this whatsoever. She's only, like, for me, it's the first time I'd seen this thing. But there was this weird, like, I couldn't even describe it. And I looked at it. And the more I looked at it, I was like, oh my God, this thing looks like me. Like, there was a particular way that the hair was part. So I've got a receding hairline on one side that's quite big compared to the other. On this little statue, it's exactly the same. I had loads of ear operations from years ago, and you can't, if I take my hat off, you can see this now, is that you can't see one of my ears if you look at me straight on. One of my ears sticks out, one doesn't. This statue had the same. I always sit with my right leg crossed over my left leg, and I sit with like an arched back a lot of the time. So I'll sit there like this. And this statue sat there exactly like in this book. And I just remember thinking, this is crazy, you know, like, is there some sort of weird thing that's happened from, and this is like me, I mean, you talk about past life regressions, you know, and is this me sort of from centuries ago or whatever, but I found that quite interesting. But yeah, no, sorry, I digress slightly. It's sort of interesting in terms of those lessons that you learn or become aware of from years ago.
I mean, it almost sounds like, were you old before your years? You know,
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I hear that a lot now. People will say that to me. I definitely think I grew up very quickly. Again, like when you're in an environment at 14 years old, every Friday and Saturday night, is where most 18 to 25-year-olds are spending. You can't not be. And there's also a part of it, it's like you want to act older, you know, you don't want to be seen as the little kid, you know, like the kids these days, like no child wants to be deemed a child. They get to, even like to be 4 years old, I'm not a baby, you know, like when they do that thing. And I think there was definitely an element of that. So yeah, I think that there's an element of that for sure. And I strive even now to learn that wisdom, those insights that see me sort of move forward. So I think so.
Looking back at, you know, now, and I suppose through those schooling years, and you talked about, you know, schools sort of being not necessarily, it's just not fit for purpose. So in hindsight now, looking back at you, I mean, how could you, or how would you deal with the likes yourself to get the most out of you from that time? Do you know?
I the same as I would say to anyone now is it's about educating people that some effort. So the more effort that you put in, rather than thinking of what's possible and what's not possible, just look at, well, what could you do that little bit more? And the answer is always yes, isn't it? Let's face it. Like, could you do more? Yeah. Could you work that a little bit? Could you think about that differently? Could you work smart? Yeah. Okay. So if I put more effort in, rather than just trying to get by or get the achievement, acknowledge the achievement, because the thing where people go wrong is that they deem like achievement a success, and not achieving, not getting the grade, a failure, right? Well, no one wants to fail. No one wants to feel like they've failed. So for me, it was easier to just fall short and then have that excuse of going, well, at least I didn't try my hardest. I could have done more. And it gave me that excuse, rather than saying, look, I'm going all out. I'm giving it absolutely everything. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And being okay with that and focusing on the process, not the outcome. And I really struggled with that for years. I never really got the concept of like focus on the process and not the outcome. Whereas now I actually get it. I was like, if you give like, I'm the same as everybody else, right? I have ambitions and drives, and I want to put myself in situations. I want to improve, but I think it's Jim Rohn who famously said, "Success is a lot of small things done well day after day," and it's making those simple switches sometimes. You know, of going, actually, do you know what? Rather than have that bowl of chips as a side. I'm going to have that salad today. You know, that making those little swaps in those moments are things that make the difference. And in those moments where I go, right, could I give a little bit more in this instance? Yeah, I could. Well, let's empty the tank, and let's empty the tank and worry about tomorrow. Do that and see what happens, because the compound effect of that, I think, is game changing.
That's interesting, because when you come to the bar and the shop, it's play full out, and you come to school and it's like, yeah, it's like, maybe just don't, as you say, don't expose yourself, don't push too hard, or else, you know,
Yeah, because it's a really good observation, and I think that's because of the driver. So in my coaching philosophy now and methodology, I talk about getting people clear on their North Star. Like, what is their North Star? Now, for me, a North Star is a guiding light, the same way it's been for centuries. Nobody, to my knowledge, and you might know differently, Pete, has ever been to the North Star, but they've used it as a guiding light. We've used it as a guiding light for centuries to get us from A to B. If you know what that North Star is and you go all out, then you know what you're doing. Whereas for me, the school didn't align with my North Star. School was a necessary process to get me to 16, 18 years old. Whereas if I'd have seen school of actually, well, no, if you get this grade, this grade, this grade, this grade, or if you give all out in terms of your, not even get the grade, if you give all out in your, if like emptying the tank in terms of effort, that's going to set you up, and that's your training to enable you to win games, if you like, in terms of the game of life. Then I would have probably had a different attitude towards it, for sure.
it is interesting at that age. You know, it's like the old thing of, you know, why the hell do I need calculus? You know, or whatever in math it was. They sort of teaching this some random formula, and you can't help but asking them, seriously, am I going to use this in my life?
How am I ever using this in my life? Exactly, right? Whereas, but if the difference that I look at it now is that I would look at it as a challenge, and the challenge is how quickly, efficiently, and effectively can I learn a process that I can do. That's the difference. So whereas then he basically was asking, rather than a why question, ask a how question. So rather than look at, well, why is learning Pythagoras theorem going to be used to me? Learn, well, how can the process of learning something complex? And one of the things that I must admit that I've regarded myself as very good at from a very young age is taking what I deem to be really complex subjects and making them really simple. You know, when I communicate things, I think I'm very good at taking something that's really complex, breaking it down into layman's terms. That's how I understand it, and then delivering it in layman terms. And that's something that I've strived to do. So I almost get off now on the idea of going, well, give me a big problem to solve. I'm going to go and research the hell out of it, and then I'm going to break it down and explain it to people in a much more simple, effective, bite-sized way of achieving that. And that's one of the things that I strive to do now.
So it's given the reason, but it sounds like you were almost very solution focused, even at a very young age too, right?
I have a saying, is that I don't believe in problems, I believe in solutions. You know, I literally have a frame on my desk here. I don't know if you can see that, but it says, for people that are just listening to this, that I'm just showing it to Pete now, is that there's no such thing as lack of resources, only a lack of resourcefulness. You know, that there's a way. Any problem is simply an unasked or unanswered question. You know, I've either not asked the right question or I've not asked the right person. It's as simple as that.
So you're getting to that age, like I say, you're trying to say you've done your day in college, literally your day, and you know the shop's looking to have you back, and this is all. So where are you going from here? What's your go-to?
In what respect? In terms of career-wise, or
just where your journey, where you're going in careers?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, the next step was sort of getting into investment sales, which I did. Become sort of quite good at that. Again, driven by money and just trying to surround myself with people that were already further ahead. I mean, my sort of blueprint to success, if you like, success, of course, being subjective, is find out what other people are doing, how they're doing it, mix it with a blend of my own personality, and I'll be a better version of me. You know, so I'm constantly looking at who's who's that level above me? You know, what are they doing? How can I learn what they're doing? How can I learn how they're thinking? And I've done that for a long time, and that was something that I did back then for sure.
So you've been exposed to the secret as well in this, you know, and you've read the book, you know, which is monumental, you know, for so many people. It's a great place to start in the whole thing. What stood out from you in the book? What resonated with you?
That's a great question. I mean, I've read it like 8 or 9 times now. Pretty much every time I go away, I take it with me. This is a bit of a reset. But what stood out to me back then was the thing that really stood out to me was understanding that whatever I had put my mind to, I had achieved. So it was realizing, Will, you're doing this process without realizing it. What would happen if you actually consciously applied it?
Yeah, it's amazing when you first, it's like staring down a tunnel at first, you know, it's like trying to drink from a fire hydrant once you start getting into the world of personal development. But understanding that, which is great to sort of realize there's more. So you're
Yeah.
saying that sort of kicked off your whole personal development. You know, what happened from then?
Yeah, well, like I say, I mean, I just sort of started to immerse myself in more books and videos, and I definitely don't take it as serious as I do now. I mean, ironically now, I spoke about before, I didn't read a book from when I was probably 11 years old until I was 18. Now I probably read, well, I don't read actually that many books. I listen to a lot of books, maybe read one or two books a month. But I mean, I probably this year I'll probably end up combined reading and listening to anywhere between sort of 60 and 70 books this year, you know, so I sort of absorb a sort of a very rapid rate. I tell you what is interesting, another part of the journey I've not touched on yet. So this particular event I went to, and I had this lightning moment. I remember I was talk about fire in the belly. You know, I was revved up. I was like, yeah, this is happening. My goal back then was I wanted to become the world's best life coach. That was the goal back then. It's not the goal now. And I remember coming home and telling my parents and my family, who were all sat down in the living room at the time, I'm going to become the world's best life coach, and this is what I'm going to do. And I remember that night registering a company online. I remember going to the bank the next day, setting up a bank account. I did all that, and I did nothing. I was like, yeah, well, I'll really start it when I'm successful. Because again, for me, I was like, well, how can I go and share other people, tell people what to do until I'm successful myself? And I did leave the city. I set up a renewable energy business. We grew that, went from a standing start with 85 staff, growing. Government changed legislation, killed that business. We tried to pivot the business and tweak that. That didn't work, and I went on holidays. Again, a bit of a funny story. So I'm a big believer in synchronicities, Pete. And I went on I went on holiday, and my girlfriend at the time was a dental nurse, and she said, look, come in before we go on holiday and have your teeth cleaned by the hygienist. I said, yeah, cool, no problem. It was her mate. I know we'd often sort of drink down the pub together. And she went in, she did a sort of hygienist. She clipped my gum. And a few days later, I was like, oh, this is really hurting. Went back in, and basically it was infected. And she said, well, I've got some bad news. And I went, okay, what's the bad news? She said, look, I've got to give you antibiotics. Now, bearing in mind, this particular business we'd set up, we'd pulled out time, energy, and effort, heart and souls into it. Government changed legislation, killed that business overnight. So I was like, right, I need a holiday. And I was going on this holiday. It's the first sort of relaxing holiday I'd had in a few years. We decided to go all out. So we'd like upgraded flights, upgraded premium alcohol, all you can drink and eat and everything in the hotel. And now I'm finding out I can't drink. Now, bear in mind, I actually don't drink anymore. But back then, I've been in rugby culture my whole life, big drinkers, all the rest of it. I was like, all right, whatever. So we go on holiday, and we're sort of about halfway in, and we're in Cancun in Mexico at the time. And there's this club in Cancun called Coca Bongos. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's like this crazy nightclub where they have loads of stuff going on. They've got like midgets swinging from the ceiling and Michael Jackson impersonators, and it's just this mad party. And obviously we're in Mexico, so my girlfriend at the time was throwing back tequilas like they're going out of fashion. And I remember thinking, my God, you're going to have one hell of a hangover tomorrow. Anyway, 5 o'clock in the morning, we're coming back to the hotel. I've got her flung over my shoulder, taking her back to the room. wake up the next morning and she's got her head down the toilet, throwing up. And Will, there's no way I'm going in the sun today. I said, well, there's no way I'm not going in the sun today. My holiday's already been ruined by not being able to drink. Like, you can stay here with your head down the toilet. I'm not standing with you. I'm going out to the sun. So off I went to the sun, and I took a book that I'd taken on holiday with me at the time, which was one of the Rhonda Byrne books, who is the author of The Secret. And it was a book called The Hero. Anyway, I'm reading through this book, sat on my own whilst my girlfriend's chucking her guts up. And it gets to this particular part, and it talks about a guy called Mastin Kipp, who has a website called The Daily Love. And he basically used to post an inspirational quote on Twitter every day. And one day he got retweeted by Kim Kardashian, and he went from 1,000 followers to 10,000 followers overnight. Now, at this point, bearing in mind, it's probably been about a year and a half since I'd first come home and said, I'm going to become the world's effort life coach. It'd been this dream, and obviously I'm still learning personal development and doing all this stuff. And I just burst out crying. Thankfully, I had my sunglasses on, so people at the pool didn't think I'm crazy for crying on this beautiful sunny day in Cancun. But I realized in that moment, I was like, Will, you idiot, you know, you've been saying I'll be successful, then I can make a difference. Like, I used to see people post motivational quotes all the time on social media, and I'd read them and be like, oh, yeah, that's been really beneficial for me today. So I could just start with that. So I decided, right, I'm going to get home and I'm going to start posting one quote a day on social media. And that's what I did. And then a week later, it's like, Will, you idiot. Some people don't go on social media in the morning. You need to post one in the evening as well. So I posted 2. Week after that, I decided to make my own website. A week after that, I wrote my first blog. 3 months later, I had a 10,000 strong social media following. And that was the real catalyst into getting into this work. A week after that, I ran my first ever event. And then sort of everything snowballed from there over what will be coming up to 5 years since I had that holiday in Cancun. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey.
Well, that's amazing. I was expecting you might have been drinking on your antibiotics. God knows where you would have ended up.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think I'd be sat here talking to you right now if that was the case.
Isn't it funny how, you know, almost your hand is slightly, you know, as you say, what way you believe that actually it's happened, and almost that, you know, that sort of forcing to stay, you know, sober and you know what you've learned out of that, it's pretty amazing.
One of my biggest lessons over the last few years, Pete, is that life happens for you, not to you. And I truly believe that all pain is a result of us holding on too tight to an ideal that we'd created for ourselves. Every year I write out a new lesson. What's been my big lesson for the year? My lesson last year for my birthday, I always write this big list out on my birthday. I share on social media, and my lesson last year was set your goals in stone, but your methods in sand. You know, and so many people, they set their methods in stone and they're not flexible. And what happens when you're not flexible? You break. And for me, the North Star stays the North Star, you know, but the trajectory in which we get there is different. You know, we're going to have to ebb and flow in the same way that a plane takes off from London to fly to New York. New York's still the destination, but it has to make constant adjustments for the wind, the weather, the flock of birds that are coming towards it. You know, we have to do exactly the same. And yeah, that's definitely something that I've learned. And those pains, if we actually let go, there's a fantastic book that I highly recommend from Michael Singer called The Surrender Experiment. And I mean, look, my company's called Make It Happen. You know, I mean, that's how much I believed in that we're in control. And I still believe that we have responsibility, and we have to stay accountable, and we have to take ownership of our actions and our decisions. But it's understanding that, having that overarching core belief. I'm not religious, but I do believe in the universe. I do believe that there is a destiny that we have an impact on as a result. But how smooth that journey for us is how aligned we live to our highest values. So becoming aware of those values, living congruently to those values. My whole coaching philosophy is built around congruence. What I mean by congruence are your actions and intentions aligned. If they are, great. If they're not, you're incongruent. The way you'll know you're incongruent is if you're caught into what I call the rift, which is where you're stressed, you're overwhelmed, you're frustrated, you're depressed, you're anxious, you're unfulfilled, all those negative emotions. And all they ever are simply a signal to think or act differently, or a combination of the both. That's it. So if you're someone that's feeling stressed, overwhelmed, frustrated, depressed, anxious, or unfulfilled, it's like, right, well, how do I need to think differently, or how do I need to act differently? And then you'll be amazed at how quickly those feelings will dissolve.
It takes a lot of insight, and I love that, that rift, and that sort of, it explains it perfectly how you can be moving, but also just because you're moving doesn't mean you're in alignment. It doesn't mean you're where you're supposed to be either, right?
Yeah, activity isn't productivity, and not all actions equal. I truly believe in intelligent action, and intelligent action is that action that's aligned to your highest values. It's aligned to your North Star. And oh my God, does that mean I get it perfect all the time? Of course not. I make decisions, and then in hindsight's a wonderful thing. But what I can say, and I truly can believe, is that if every day I wake up with the intention of living to my highest values, and making decisions based on that, then if things don't work out the way that I want them to, then it's gonna unfold, and it's gonna lead me to something better. That particular time, I went and I got my teeth cleaned from the hygienist. Like, she clipped my gum. She told me there's only one of two antibiotics you can't drink alcohol on. I was one of those, and if she'd have told me normal antibiotics, I would have drunk on them for sure. And I've had many a situations where I've done things that at the time that I believed were the right thing to do, and they have not worked out. But just because you fail, it doesn't mean you're a failure. There's that visual that no doubt you've seen, where sort of the success as a destination, there's always stepping stones that are called failures that you climb up. And there's not a single thing that I've done in my life that at some point I might have labeled a failure that I can't look back on now and connect. And as an exercise I do with my clients, I get them to draw out, imagine like a landscape piece of paper, and you have an x-axis and a y-axis, and I get them to have sort of a plus, a 0, and a minus on the y-axis. I think the y-axis is the long one, right? And then the x-axis across. And I get them to plot out their life in terms of emotion, positive to negative and neutral, and they draw it out. And generally, the thing that they draw looks like what a heartbeat would on one of those machines. And if you look at their lowest moments and you look at their highest moments, there's in every instance I've ever done this with, there is a correlation. People's lowest lows and their highest highs are correlated, because the universe is constantly trying to bring you back into equilibrium and bring you back into balance. So if you've had something that you've experienced that you perceive to be a negative, there will be a positive that's come from that. And we all look back in hindsight and go, oh God, yeah, that was one of the best things that ever happened to me, right? But the challenge that most people don't have is they don't have the tools to be able to, rather than have to wait 5 years, 10 years, and they go through 5 years or 10 years of suffering to look back on that and realize it was the best thing that happened to them. They don't have the tools and the techniques to be in that moment and be able to realize it in that moment. And when you have the tools and techniques to be able to do that, that's when life gets really, really powerful, because you don't have to rely on time to benefit from the hindsight. You can experience it in the moment.
Interesting. And I like that sort of, that almost life ECG, that sort of, where you're at. And you say there's a correlation between the low and the high. Do you think, is it a case that the lower the low, the higher the high, in terms of your perception?
For sure. And what you said there is key, is it's your perception. It's always your perception. Now, our highest values are created because of our perceived voids.
Voids are your values,
I talk about means values and end values, but my highest 4 means values are self-mastery, building businesses, creating wealth, and building relationships. Well, if I look back to the voids that I perceived when I was younger, take my dad, there wasn't self-mastery. He didn't build the business that he wanted to build. He didn't create the wealth that he always dreamed of. And there was an element of isolation. I love collaboration. I absolutely love collaborating with great people like yourself, and connecting and sharing. And I mean, I've got a part of my company is called the Evolve Network. We run events around the UK where I literally bring other personal development speakers, coaches, trainers, consultants onto our platform, which people could argue, well, why are you bringing your competitors onto your platform? Because I don't see them as competitors. I see them as collaborators. Like, how can we collaborate together and have a bigger ripple effect as a result of that? And that for me is what's important. So those values come from my perceived voids back then, for sure.
And I mean, I love your story as well, because it's a bit like, the rich dad, poor dad. It's, how you have your uncles as influences, you've the outside influences, with your own dad, everything that's going on there, that actually you've woven through and found your own journey through all that as well, which is great, and you find out what's meant for you, right?
For sure.
Interesting. You talked about renewable energy. I had a similar story with renewable energy business and changes in government legislation. Say, how was that time for you? Because it sounded like you had built up the business to quite a significant scale, and then you basically get your lights turned out.
Yeah, I mean, again, for me, so there was me and one of my really good friends, and we set it up. And again, it was it's crazy. So I basically headed up the marketing side of the business, and we had sort of a significant marketing. I mean, we had 50 people in the call center. We had 10 door canvassers that were going out. Then we had 15 sales reps at the time, and then my business partner oversaw sort of the fulfillment side of the business, which we partnered up with key businesses that actually did the fulfillment of the renewable services that we were selling to people. So we're effectively a sales and marketing hub for certain installers of these services. And one of the things that I loved was that it was the training element. That in coaching there's a little tool called a Wheel of Life, and these guys, some of these kids were like 16 years old that come into work in our call center, and they would do 2 days training with me from 9 till 5. And we would be doing like things like Wheel of Life and life goals and personal goals, and then the actual training of the courses. And I loved that. And then obviously going out and sort of doing that rev up meeting every Monday morning, or every sort of on a daily basis each morning, to get those guys fired up on all cylinders. So I was doing an element of what I do now in that business. So it wasn't like I was, that I definitely found enjoyable. One of the things I can honestly say is that I don't think I've ever been in a job that I didn't enjoy. Like how people will go to jobs their whole life hating what they do. Like if I think back to anything that I've ever done, of course there's moments, like there isn't anything else, but from when my very first paper round that I used to do in the pouring rain, I loved it. The pot boy job, glass collecting, the work in the clothes shop, all of that stuff. And that's something that I truly believe in. Like one of my big things now is I work with people to transform issues into results and live a life that they love. And most of us spend most of our working week, most of our week, full stop, most of our day, full stop, working. Like, why would you not want to do something that you love doing? And I think that's really important. Whether you're working for yourself or for someone else, is just love what you do.
That's the thing. I mean, the sort of the typical working week plus travel plus all the other resources that go with. I mean, it's a huge amount of time for maybe a good reward, maybe not, but that's time for money on someone else's terms. It's it can be a hard pill to swallow, right?
100%.
It's, from there then, I suppose, leaving the renewables behind, what was your, what were your goals then? What was your sort of go-to after that?
So yeah, I mean, it was interesting. There was an interesting pivot. So we did set up a property, but at the same time I set up Make It Happen. We set up a property investment business as well, and I was a partner in that then involved into property education business. I wasn't as involved in it because the way that we structured the businesses then. What was really interesting with Make It Happen. So my idea, and this is again like where I throw myself in the deep end from a modeling perspective, but I wasn't I hadn't immersed myself in the personal development world. I hadn't gone to every event, done every course and learned everything. I was just like, right, I'm just doing this. So in my mind, I was like, right, well, it's simple. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create an event, a 1-day event called Unlock Your Potential. I'm gonna put on a free event every week. I'm going to get 50 people to come to that. I'm going to provide loads of value. I'm going to get 20% of those people to come to my paid event as a result of sort of giving them a preview, taster, whatever you want to call it. And that's how it will roll. So I spoke about sort of what I did in the first week, the second week, the third week, but the 3 months of the 10,000 social media following. In the fourth month, I ran these events. I remember I ran my first event on the January the 7th. I wanted 50 people there. I had 36. That wasn't too bad, albeit 33 of those were friends and family. And then my plan was I wanted to convert 20% of the room. I didn't. I sold one ticket. I sold one ticket. The second week I had 16 people. I sold no tickets. The third week I had 12 people. I sold no tickets. The fourth week I had 13 people. I sold one ticket. I thought to myself, something's got to change here. And what I thought to myself was, like, other coaches, speakers, trainers, consultants, they must be having the same challenge that I'm having here. Why don't we all just work together? And that was where I had the idea for a network, which we created, which is now called the Evolve Network. At the time, my idea was to bring great speakers to people locally, which was modeling an idea of a network that I was part of, a property network that I was part of, which every month had 2 guest speakers. They had 40, 50 people attend the events, and they ran it as a membership model. And that was the goal back then. And that's how we started. I didn't know any speakers, so I reached out to somebody that did. This is the whole, like, there's always a way, you know, be resourceful. Reached out to a local guy called Mark Davis, who also at the time owned a TEDx license. So I knew that he knew speakers, and reached out and said, look, I want to put on these events locally. This is what I want to do. Here's the vision. Do you want to be involved? He was like, yeah, cool. So he started by introducing me to speakers and getting that underway. And we did that. And yeah, started that whole process. And it kind of evolved out from this, and then Make It Happen become more of a thing. And then with the Evolve Network, and then, like I say, we ended up adding on, I think we got to either 11 or 13 different services that we offer up to last year, sort of from that initial event not working the way that I wanted it to, the Unlock Your Potential Discovery evenings, and expanding out, but various different things, including business owner masterminds, group coaching, one-on-one coaching, my workshop, my Unlock Your Potential workshop, which is now no longer just a one-day workshop. It's a 2-day intensive. You spend 20 hours with me across 2 days. We created an NLP training academy where we train people in neuro-linguistic programming. We run a big multi-speaker annual event. There's loads of stuff that we've done, and online memberships with access to online videos and all that good stuff. But it's just evolving, you know, and constantly developing as time goes on.
Lovely. So I love well, first of all, where did Make It Happen? Where did that name come from?
So, do you know what's really interesting? So I said about that time I come home and decided to make a company. So I don't know if you know this, but Alan Sugar, obviously a lot of people know Alan Sugar, famous guy, famous entrepreneur, businessman, whatever you want to label him as. His company is called Amstrad, which stands for Alan Michael Sugar, I believe, AMS Trading, Amstrad. And I used to have a favorite quote, and my quote at the time was, I can, I will. And I can, I will sounded a bit crap. So I thought, what if I play with it? My name's Will. Will, I can. If you use the I as like a mirror, like mirror either side. So I can, I will. That was kind of how. So I created a company called Willican Limited. But every time I spoke with people on the phone, said Willican Limited or Willican, I'm calling from Willican, they were like, what? Will I can? Will I am? What? Like, but it just didn't make sense. And one day I was just driving home, and I used to my sales teams. I used to send out in the morning. I'd send out a little pep up email, and I'd always send a quote. And I'd sign the quote off saying, make it happen, all in capitals with an exclamation mark. And I started playing with that. And then one day I was just driving home, and I thought I wanted a name with meaning. Like for me, the Amstrad, the Willa Can, it had meaning behind it. And then I was like, yeah, make it happen. That's it. That's the one, you know, because it had the meaning. I used to send it every day in the emails, and it was easier, and people got it. And yeah, that was kind of how it came. So that's how Make It Happen as a name came about.
I love that. It's, it's very simple, but it works, and it's super effective, and it means a lot to you.
Yeah.
So what part of the personal development side did you enjoy? Is it the speaking with people, or is it the actual taking part, or the breakthroughs, or what was it for you? Or what is it, I should say?
It's just the breakthroughs, like when you see the whites of people's eyes, and they're just like, oh my God, I get it. Whatever that could be for them. And I've worked with people from all different walks of life, from those that are professional athletes and celebrities at one end of the spectrum, business owners, those that want to start businesses, like transition from career to business, right through to I've had phone calls in the middle of the night when someone's about to commit suicide and I'm doing those interventions, you know. So there's a real spectrum. And just knowing that they've got that realization, and it's like we spoke right at the beginning, what does fire in the belly mean to me? That inspiration, igniting that energy and that drive, that focus, that channeled energy, and providing that perspective that they maybe didn't have before. And I don't have all the answers, you know. I talk about the fact that I use strategic intervention, which is a couple of fancy words for questions, to get people to think differently. So they can think differently, they can act differently, they can act differently, and then get different results. And some stuff that people come up with, I've never come up with. Like I say, I mean, oh my gosh, some of the stuff that when I have these calls, people are like, oh my God, and like I might have an hour booked in with them, and we get 30 minutes in, they're like, right, I'm done. Like, I just need to get going and just put this into action. You know, there's that for me is really powerful. And yeah, look, they're not always those big lightning moments. Sometimes it's the realization that sort of compounds and it sort of settles in, seeps in. They're like, right, now I get it, you know. And sometimes it's as simple as just giving people that accountability. I truly believe that action won't happen unless you have clarity of what to do, the strategic way of doing it. And if you don't have accountability, you know, we've been conditioned our whole life to be accountable. When we're born, we're accountable to our parents, go to school, we're accountable to our teachers, go to work, we're accountable to our bosses. Then we go into the big wide world and we want to achieve something for ourselves and wonder why stuff doesn't happen. I truly believe that's because we're not held accountable. You know, accountability works because of two sides of the same coin. You either want to avoid looking bad or you want to look good. That's it. You know, and if you have that, then you do that. People that say they don't want accountability, in my experience, are people that are not achieving their capabilities, you know, because they don't want to fall short. Like, look, I've been held accountable to people, and there are times I'm like, I do not want to do this, but I get it done because as a grown adult, I don't want to have to say to another grown adult, I've not done something that I said I was going to do in the first place, you know? So I'm driven by pain. Some people are driven by pleasure. They want that pat on the back to say, well done, you've done a great job. I'm pleased you've got it done, you know? It's a combination.
Because I was going to say, I mean, how does that sort of pleaser gene and you know, how does the ego play for you in there?
Yeah, in terms of what?
Well, I suppose just in your own sort of daily operation, you know, is it, do you know, I mean, does ego come into play for you, or is it something you've
Like,
worked
as
on?
in, so I'm like, have I created this for them?
Yeah.
I work really hard to humble myself, because if I don't humble myself, then someone or something is going to humble me. So yeah, I do make a point of trying to humble myself. Look, one of the things, I'll be really honest, I was having this conversation with someone earlier that I really struggled with was sharing my client wins. For exactly that reason, I didn't want other people to think, oh, you're just blowing your trumpet, you're blowing your own trumpet and you're making yourself look really good. But sometimes it's like, what's the intent it's done with? Like the difference for me was when someone said to me, Will, like, how many more people could benefit from the results that they've just got? And I was like, yeah, I get it. Because there's one thing, me saying I'm great, but someone else saying the result that they've got, it's a different feel. You know, I'm saying, this is what I do, come and work with me. But if someone else says, I work with Will, this is what I got, it's just that different perspective. And I had a big, we did a marketing campaign earlier this year, and I was advised by one of our marketing team, look, let's get some client testimonials on video. And I'd never done that before because I'd always kept wanting to keep everything confidential. And I had this own story. I was telling myself, like, they don't want to be seen. And we did that, and we marketed it out, and we had like 7 of these new clients that come on board that never heard of me before. When we asked them, like, why did you get involved in the program? And they just said, we watched the video testimonial and it's simple. I want their results. It's as simple as that. And I was like, okay, cool. That makes sense. I get it now. So yeah. I try to humble myself, and one of the things that I will always say is that the same way that I don't take acknowledgement, like I haven't done the work when they've done well, I also haven't not done the work when they don't do what they want, if that makes sense. You know, I don't make it about me. So you got to look at it from 2 perspectives. So if they haven't achieved what they wanted to achieve, that's not my, I didn't do that. It's not like I could have done it for them the same way that I didn't do it for them if they achieved well. I've just been a catalyst. They've still done the work. They've still had to take ownership, be accountable, have that responsibility. And yeah, just understand that I'm a catalyst and I'm there to be a mirror in a lot of instances and shine that mirror or show that mirror, because you can't see the whole picture when you're in the frame. And sometimes just sharing what I see is an insight in itself. You know, sometimes we delve a bit deeper and we use, like I say, strategic intervention. And yeah, of course, sometimes I share a little nugget of my own experience or something that worked for me, and that helps as well. But yeah, I definitely work on trying to humble myself. But I don't get it right all the time. Yeah, some people that might connect with me on social media or whatever, and they'll be like, yeah, no, you're getting above yourself there, and that's cool. That's their perception, and there'll be other people that think the opposite of that. Because again, has to be balanced. There'll be people that we saying, "Come on, Will, you need to shout about it more," or whatever. But yeah,
how are you with taking praise and taking compliments?
Years ago, someone once said to me, "Most people deflect compliments." So they will say things like, if I gave you or someone gave me a compliment, I'd say, "Oh, no, you're great," you know, or, "Oh, no, I'm not," and you put yourself down. And if you listen to that, a lot of people do that. And I think, I can't actually remember who it was that said to me, I might have heard it somewhere, but someone said that if someone gives you a compliment, it's a gift. And the same way that if someone turned up with a box wrapped up for you and they gave you that gift, you wouldn't go, "Oh, no, I don't want that." Yeah. You wouldn't go, "Oh, no, you have it. You have that gift you bought me." You wouldn't do it. And one of the best things that someone ever taught me is just to say, if someone gives you a compliment, just say thank you and accept it.
It's great. It's great approach to have. So talk to me about Tony Robbins' UPW, I assume, in London, was it?
It was, yeah.
It's it's nuts. I think is probably the best way of describing it.
Powerful couple of days, yeah. Powerful couple of days.
What stage were you at then? So stepping in through the doors there, that was a part of your
Yeah,
journey.
again, I went there. I was like, right, I'm gonna learn some more stuff that's gonna make me make more money. You know, that was it. I wanted. At the time, I've probably got it in a thing down there actually, with my old UPW manual, and I remember reflecting back on it a couple of years ago, and one of the things was that I'd never had enough time and I never had enough money. I was earning a lot of money back then, but I still never had enough money and I never had enough time. So yeah, that was probably what I was going for. And yeah, I got something I could never have expected to get, for sure.
For anyone who's not been, it is also like a rave. It's fairly full on. You know, it's so what you know, really from there, and you're saying there was a turning point for you, that, you know, the Tony Robbins aspect in terms of your view of, you know, it was all about the money and the, you know, the sort of all the nice things. What sort of changed for you then, and what solidified that?
It was a completely different way of thinking. Like I say, I for me, I felt at that time I'd like tapped into this emotion, and that's what it was. It was an emotion. Emotion is just energy in motion, and I had tapped into this energy that made me realize why I had the drive I did for money. And it was never about me. I did a TEDx talk called "It's Not About You," and I share a lot of the stuff we spoke about today, and realizing that there's a driver deep down within you. There's a driver, and it's a driver that you don't want to. Typically, it's born from some sort of pain that you're maybe unconscious to at the moment, or anyone's unconscious to. But there'll be a pain, an element of pain that you've experienced or witnessed or perceived that you don't want other people to experience. Typically, that pain was generally experienced before the age of 18 years old, sometimes before the age of 15 years old. And yeah, it just gave me that awareness. So then it was like on my radar. But like I say, I started making some changes, but those changes didn't happen in the way that I would have maybe initially expected. And yeah, like, I think that I know that things changed because or I know that my thinking had changed because of the actions that I then started taking thereafter. You know, I started looking at how could I get out of this career and how could I get into doing something else. And I took those opportunities and made educated, informed decisions. But what was ironic, because not long after that happened, was that also I lost every penny I had as well. So I used to do a lot of trading myself as well. And I blew myself up. So every penny I had at the time, I was 22, 23 years old, 6-figure sum of savings, blew the lot, and some. And yeah, that was, at the time I was like, that's all right, I can earn that back in a few months, but that never happened. And then that took me on another level of personal development journey of exploration for myself, because obviously I'd had this belief that money equaled happiness. And then like, there's one thing not having any money and then getting money, but there's one thing not having money, making a lot of money, then losing it all and some, when you've already got an identity around being financially successful and all that good stuff. And there, that led me down my own personal development journey, much deeper journey than I would ever have been on, from just learning through books, that's for sure. And I think that if you'd have asked me back then, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do I know about personal development? I would have told you about 8.5 out of 10. If you ask me now, I'll tell you 2 out of 10. You know, there's so much I don't know. I know more than I've ever known, but I know that I'm still at a point where there's more out there than I'm ever going to know, you know? So I've got to, I'm sort of constantly looking to strive and learn those nuances and those experiences and use them. Similarly to, as I mentioned before, how can I take them, learn them in the most effective, efficient way, apply them to my own life, and then use them to impact other people.
Makes sense. What is your chosen method for learning?
Listening. I'm really weird in the respect of
Thank God you said that.
I can listen information. I can understand information at a rapid speed. So a lot of people think I talk quite fast. My God, imagine being in my head. So I mean, when I listen to audiobooks, I'm typically listening to them like 3.5 times speed. People get in my car sometimes, I'm listening to an audiobook and they're like how do you even do that? Like, it's no. And yeah, I can understand it. Typically if I watch something, I've got like this really visual memory, so I can see someone do something once and then I can just do it. I'm not the best at remembering stuff word for word, but from a doing perspective, yeah, I can just do it. So like scripts and stuff I'm not great at, but give me a structure and a framework, like I could visualize. It's a lot easier to visualize a framework than it is to visualize a script, to remember all the different words. But yeah, I can knock that out. So yeah, interestingly, from an audio perspective, that's why I love audiobooks. I get through so many audiobooks so quickly. And yeah, from a doing perspective.
Interesting. So you're obviously it sounds like you're very visual. So you got to put it into a picture, and then you see the picture, and then you got it. You know, it's the show me once, and that's me taught.
Yeah.
You know, but don't throw me the book and ask me to digest it or to, you know.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, I'm in instructions and reading instructions. I mean, I don't know if it's just a guy thing or whatever, but I normally fumble. I'd rather fumble my way through it trying to do it than read an instruction. It's probably why I sort of I've never been any good at making IKEA furniture. But yeah, no, that's that.
I mean, it's like anything, I suppose, whether it be a course or, you know, an Apple iPhone or whatever. You know, if you have to read the instructions, it's almost badly designed. You know, it's you're relying on people thinking of how they would use it, you know, going forward. So what's your driver now with, you know, with Make It Happen now? Where do you see this all going, and what's your future there?
Yeah, I mean, I would love for Make It Happen to be the go-to personal development brand. I mean, I know there's certain people that are acknowledged for doing what they're doing. For me, I've tried to make this not about me, and like the reason I use Make It Happen rather than willpolston.com is because I do believe that there's certain services that we can create that provide a a platform, a vehicle for people to come into that world and get the. I mean, similarly to, I don't know if you're familiar with Landmark and Landmark Forum and all the rest of it. Landmark is a brand that, there was a person behind it, but not many people know about that person. They just know Landmark for Landmark, and that there's that kind of thing. I'd love to make it happen to go down that route and for people to be like, right, I want to make changes in my life. Right, fine, go to a Make It Happen event or have a Make It Happen coach or do that. And part of the North Star, I would love Make It Happen to be the go-to personal development brand in the world. I would love that to be the case. But that to be done in like I say, in a way that there's lots of collaboration and it's not about I'm the best, we're better than you, from that kind of place.
So tell me what standout books for you. What are the go-tos for people?
So I actually have on my blog, I'm going to plug this if you don't mind. So on make-it-happen.co.uk/blog, there's a blog that I continually update, which is my top 15 books and like 60 plus others. So I break it down into, because I get asked weekly, well, what books do you recommend? So I just gave it up and I just said, right, I'm just going to create this link. I'm going to keep it up to date and I'm always going to send it to people. So I've got all different categories, everything from sort of motivation to sleep to health to mindset, overcoming adversity, whatever. And then I have the top 15 and the top 3. Or if I give sort of maybe some of the top 5. So I always have The Secret at number 1. It just has been forever because it's such a pivotal moment for me. There's a book called As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. Soul for Happy by Mo Gawdat, I think it's at number 3 at the moment. Psycho-Cybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz. Maltz is might be at number 4. What would be at number 5 right now? I can't actually remember what's at number 5, but I'm going to look because I don't want to do the listeners an injustice by not sharing one more. I said I was going to give 5. So
Think and Grow Rich in there for you?
It's not. Do you know what? It's not. And I don't know whether that's because I listened to it sort of quite late in my personal development journey. I mean, I know sort of Think and Grow Rich, Rich Dad Poor Dad is another one that's sort of a classic for a lot of people, and it's not. And I wonder if that's because for me, I wonder if that's because The Secret was so profound for me, and sort of the Think and Grow Rich element of obviously thinking about it, believing it, taking action. I mean, Think and Grow Rich is in my top 15. It's actually at number 12 at the moment. So yeah, that is there. I've moved this around since. So Psycho-Cybernetics is now at number 6. The Values Factor by Dr. John Demartini is number 4, and Principles by Ray Dalio is at number 5. So there you go. You've got another got an extra bonus one there. So yeah, that's what's there on that particular blog now.
Love it. What's your mantra? Your own personal mantra?
One of them is there's no such thing as lack of resources, only a lack of resourcefulness. I've got a bunch of affirmations that I read each day, but one of the ones that I definitely live by is there's no such thing as lack of resources. Just resourcefulness is just knowing that I do have the ability to create change when I get stuck. Like there's a way, and I think living with that belief that it's possible. For me, I've worked with some people at some real lows, that are depressed, extreme depressed, suicidal, and in my experience, that's because they can't see a future. They can't see what's there. And I think for as long as you live with possibility that something can be overcome, a challenge can be overcome, then I think was it Henry Ford? Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Is definitely an optimistic way, and if there's those times when you're really struggling, and I've been there as well, by the way, like when you're in the lowest of the lows and you just can't see a way out, then that's where the 5 magic, I had to count them there, the 5 magic words come into play. Can you help me, please? And reaching out to someone, that you'll be amazed at how many people are willing to help in those challenging times.
That's interesting. Do you have to monitor your own mental state and
Sure. Yeah, for sure. I'm a big believer is you can't pour from an empty jug, you know. So
Mm.
I do a lot. I alluded to meditation earlier, and I have a sort of a morning routine, and I do a lot um, to keep my energy high. Um, and I'm not there to save or rescue other people. That is not what I'm here to do as a mindset strategist. I'm here to get people to think differently. But I pour a lot of my time, energy, and effort into my clients, into our community, and I've got to be mindful of my energy, you know. And the same way that a light bulb, if you take an old-fashioned normal light bulb, that light bulb expands its energy out everywhere, but the light doesn't reach as far. Whereas you take a laser pen, all that energy is channeled in one direction. It reaches a lot further. So I'm conscious to channel my energy, not let it sort of seep out, leak out, and sort of fall in areas where it's not. So I live a pretty tight, rigid. I say rigid. There's flexibility in it, but I live a very process-driven life, which is what enables me to stay sane. By sort of the same way where a horse keeps blinkers on, I try and keep the blinkers on. And yeah, I have time where I sort of allow myself to think, and I go running and just sort of give myself that space. But it's something that I do, and it's something I say for so many people. What they do is they, particularly women, is that they put everybody before themselves, you know. But the same way that when you get on an airplane, they say put your own oxygen mask on. If you haven't put your own oxygen mask on, you can't be of use. You can't be of real great use to anybody else. You could be of use, but are you being the best use? So yeah.
And you know, whenever you are monitoring, I suppose your own status. I mean, do you have a blind spot? I mean, do you seek other mentors, or do you seek?
I mean, I've got lots of mentors. I've got lots of indirect mentors. I've got coaches that I work with. I've got peer groups that I'm in that, like, I tell them, I want you to call me out. Only today I was on the phone to someone that's a mentor of mine. I'm looking at joining another group that they're in, because I've just said, like, guys, I'm not getting enough challenge. Like, I'm not being told, we'll rein your neck in, we'll do more of this, we'll do it. Like, I need that challenge. It's a bit like if you imagine the bumpers when you take the kids bowling, you put the bumpers up. Like, if I've not got that bumper to bounce me back into the middle, then I'm going into the gutter, you know. So I need those bumpers there so that they can sort of keep me moving forward. And I strive to get around people that influence me, that I admire and trust, that are steps ahead on the journey that I am, to give me those insights. And yeah, look, not the person that it is, and I'm not looking for unsolicited advice from everybody to pour into my inboxes, whatever inboxes they might be. But there's certain people that I specifically want information, I want feedback from, and that's important too.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you think a lot of people get you?
Good question. A lot of people say they struggle to read me, which I'm quite glad about. I mean, I'm very good at sort of getting to understand people and get to see certain things. A lot of people struggle to read me and know what I'm thinking, all the rest of it. Do they get me? I think if you've been around me for long enough, and it doesn't take that much long for people to know that they know that I love my work. I've got this mission. It's a big mission. I pour my time, energy, effort, money, resources, everything into it. I think they get that. I think that some people probably think that I'm on the extreme of that. There's a quote that I love, which is obsessed is just a word that the lazy call the dedicated. I definitely think I'm in that criteria. I'm definitely obsessed. But I'm dedicated to what I do, and yeah.
That's good. Personal values then. I know you talked about sort of values before, but really, you know, what sort of key things stand out for you there? Because there was a couple of years back there, but I'm just curious to know what your own thought is on it.
On what? Sorry.
Your personal values.
Yeah, so I talk about means values and end values. So means values are things that you do. End values are typically feelings, and you've got end towards values, which are pleasurable things, end away are pain values, things that you try to avoid. And yeah, I mean, the study of axiology is one of the least studied ologies, and it's one of the most important, which is the study of values. And very few people have studied it. Very few people do ever study it. But It's one of the most important things. A lot of people, they've got caught up with values because they hear them in the corporate environment, and they think of things like honesty and trust, and they're just words that are maybe printed on a poster that are in a workplace that they've looked at once or twice and are told at once a year to look at and read a little bit of blurb that goes with it. But when you really understand values, then it's a game changer. Not only understand them, but live by them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And consciously rearrange the hierarchy and things, for sure.
I mean, even the name of your company, I think is brilliant. Just make it happen. That's what, what have you got to do to make it happen? That's key. It's a great way to be. Guilty pleasure for you?
Galaxy chocolate.
Ooh, interesting. Big bar, little bar?
Big bar, always. or multiple little bars.
Devoured in one sitting.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's a great way to be. Tell me, well, so I mean, if you were to summarize Fire in the Belly in like one or a few words, and what your Fire in the Belly is, how would you summarize that?
So yeah, as in what it means to have fire in the belly, or the podcast?
Yeah, your Fire in the Belly. So what really triggers you? What gets you going? What's your passion?
For me, it's like fire in the belly is like where there's no excuses. Where are there no excuses? Where are you moving forward, progressing, developing, and moving forward? Like where is no not an option? And you're willing to run through those brick walls, or go through the wall, around the wall, over the wall, whatever it is. That's fire in the belly for sure.
I love it. So tell me, I mean, I love your message, and I love your thinking. So where can people reach out to you? Where can people follow you and find out more?
Yeah, of course. So on all the socials, Will Polston, obviously Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. We've got a Facebook group called the Make It Happen Community. It's about 5,000 people in there sharing their wisdom and challenges and wins and blogs and whatever. It's all going on in there. Is where I share a lot of my content regularly. The Make It Happen with Will Polston podcast. And then obviously make-it-happen.co.uk. They're some of the main places to come and check us out and connect.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming on and sharing so openly with us as well. And I wish you all the best. I look forward to hearing where you go from now.
No, thank you. Pleasure for having me. And look forward to chatting again very soon.
Thanks, Will.